Hi, JaTorra. Welcome today. Well, my guest today is JaTorra Commodore, and she is going to tell us about the change that she's made in her life over the last few years. So, JaTorra, just tell us first of all a little bit about yourself and what life was like before you decided to make a change.
Okay, sure. So as Kimberly had said, I'm JaTorra. I'm I'm from New York City, moved to the state of Connecticut, and basically I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I was an educator for 20 years and really just floating floating through life, making, impact with, teaching children. I was an elementary school teacher, and, yeah, that's basically what I
Okay.
was doing. Yeah.
And what was happening in your life at the time then that made you think you needed to make a change?
Yes. So, really, it was it was in my 18th year of teaching that, there started to be this change in not just in me, but really in my career and how I was feeling about teaching. Um, I started to have these feelings of anxiety as far as going into work. And I also was really becoming stressed out every day. It was a very toxic environment, not a lot of support, and education had changed drastically. Um, it really started to make me feel like um, I dreaded going to work every day. I really, there was a lot of support that I needed that was not there for me. I didn't feel like I was making an impact on the children. And so I started wondering, you know, what else possibly could I do to help myself because I felt this downward spiral of my mental, physical, and emotional health.
Mm.
Yeah.
And was there a particular moment that you thought, this is it? Or was it a gradual kind of realization that something needed to change?
I think it was a I think it was a gradual thing prior to that 18th year. There were some feelings, but I also felt like, oh, maybe I just need a change within education. And so I moved to a different grade level, tried different things within education just to see if that was it. Because sometimes we get really comfortable where we are and we feel like, oh, maybe we just need that change. But in my 18th year of teaching, there was a series of things that were happening that it really just made me think more and more and more that something has to be done. And it was gradual, it kind of compounded because it wasn't until I was really feeling the health effects of it. Um, I remember after that year in the summer getting ready to go back to work and like just feeling having these feelings in the pit of my stomach that um, I didn't wanna go back. I didn't really understand at first what it was, and I was thinking, "Oh, just, brush it off. You'll be okay," and that kinda thing, but again, I wasn't, and I feel as though I was getting these, like, whispers almost as, like, this may not be the be all end all for you. This may not be it. This may not, I just thought this was going to be my career and I was going to retire as a teacher, sometimes we get into a career and we've been there for so long, you think this is it. But I was also like counting down the years of when I was going to be done, and it was so far away still. And when I thought about, the possibility of leaving, it really scared me. It scared me because um I was so wrapped up in the security of,
Mhm.
having this good career, because it was like, okay, then what? What are you gonna do next? Type of thing. So,
So, what was the moment, or when did you make that decision? What made you make that decision to leave?
yeah. So it actually was in 2018 was actually my 18th year of teaching. So I started teaching in the year 2000. In um 2019, so our school year goes from September to June. In 2019 to actually 2020, in March, the whole pandemic thing happened, and there was the shutdown, and the kids went home and everything was online at work. And I was starting to have those feelings then, like this whole thing of the unknown with the pandemic, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. And us being online, teaching got even more stressful. It was a lot. And so I remember summer came again, feeling that anxiety, and then going back to work and realizing that we had to change up the way we were teaching in and I almost started work. I went um and spoke to my medical professional, and I had decided to take a leave of absence um to sort things out and to really see, because I felt like I really did feel like this was going to be that year. I think I always was afraid that I was going to have like this nervous breakdown at work, or I was going to be, hate to say it this way, but I was going to be that person on the news that like lost it and didn't mean to. And so I really feel like I needed a break. Um I really needed some time to evaluate some things. And so I did take a leave of absence for a year. And during that year, I made a lot of decisions that prompted me then not to go back.
So, when
So,
you took that leave of absence, did you have any ideas about what you might do next, or was it kind of a blank canvas?
yeah, it was a little bit of both, because I was, you know, already thinking of some things that I could possibly do. And one of those things involved like going back to school to go into a whole another field. And um, however, that wasn't a huge option for me. Even though I had my master's, I would have had to get my master's in something else. And just monetarily, it just wasn't feasible. It wasn't the highest priority on my plate. And um, I thought a lot about the time that it would take, and so, um, I think I really sat and thought about some things that I could do, and there were, people that came into my life, there were opportunities that came into my life that really made me think about, like, "Oh, this could be an option." So I thought about helping. Initially, I thought about helping teachers in the way that I needed the support. So being a life coach or support system for educators to help them with burnout, to help them with stress, to help them um, not necessarily make the decision of leaving the profession, but what are things and steps that you could do before it gets to the point of you feeling like you have to leave the profession. Um, and so I wanted to help teachers with their own self-care, their own wellness. And that's where I started learning more about what are some things that I could do.
So, and what was the feeling like at the time in that leave of absence? You've got this kind of, you've gone from something you knew in the security to what next? What were the emotions that you had?
Right. Um, for one, I felt really guilty about leaving teaching. I almost felt like I was quitting and that I was leaving kids behind and um I wasn't strong enough and cut out to do the work. And so the guilt was something in the beginning that I really had to get over. Um, but there was also this sense of excitement brewing for like what was next? What could I do? And though it took some time and it was a little difficult in the beginning, the whole thing of like figuring it out on my own and believing in myself that I could do this um is was one of the greatest emotions that I felt. There was a huge sense of worry around financial security, but I do have to say that my husband became, the sole provider and we made it work. And the one thing he had said to me was that my health was more important than anything. And
Mm.
so we were able to figure it out. Um and during that time connected with, um, Mike Dooley and IP and things like that that kind of pushed a lot of this forward for me,
Mm.
and really helped me to realize that this is possible.
So the IP, the Infinite Possibilities community that Mike Dooley has, what was it about that that made you feel it's possible? What did you take from that?
Yeah, wow, it's so much. I really started I feel as though I started to be in circles that included people who were doing a lot of the work around, like, crushing limiting beliefs and believing that they could have and be more. Um, and they were they were these chasers, so to speak, but in a way of like I just saw what it was that they were doing and the sense of community and the sense of the IP crew calls themselves a family and that connected with me so much. When I first actually got connected to Mike Dooley. It was in January of 2021, I believe. And I had taken one of his courses, and it was really around, um, you know, rewriting your story and like just kind of what could you do to, get your goals, intact and how do you, have these dreams and have them manifest them basically. And as I learned it, I just thought about how my goodness, more people need to learn about this. I didn't even know this was out there. I don't even know how old I was then, like in my early 40s maybe. And I was like, I'm just learning this stuff. Imagine had I had this earlier on. And yeah, it just gave me a sense of power, of purpose, and just being around people seeing all the wonderful things that they were also doing in their life and the things that they were making happen for themselves, um, really gave me a greater sense of purpose and feeling like I'm on the right path. I'm on the right track.
So tell me what happened then. What did you find along that path?
So really along that path, I remember taking that course and then deciding um in May of that year to actually become a trainer. So I took his training to train other people on the IP principles. The month before that, I decided to get certified in meditation, and that was one of the tools that I feel really saved my life. It really has helped me connect to myself, to my greater sense of purpose. It's helped to keep me calm in situations. It's helped me to take a pause when things get hard. And so it was also, these things I became connected with that were tools for my own healing and my own personal growth became things that I wanted to help others with. And knowing that I didn't have to go get a college degree, another degree to do that. It was essentially these certifications. And so since then, I've meditation certification, IP certification, I went and got a yoga certification. And so now I deem myself as a personal development and wellness coach. And I help people with mindfulness and meditation, yoga, um, mindset practices, all of those things to help with stress management. Because as we know, we're all going to encounter stress. So I can't say eliminate stress, but how do we manage our stress when things get this this hard and is difficult. And so I've taught a few rounds of the IP trainings. I've done some of this work with kids. And that's been a huge thing because now I'm back in I'm back in schools in a different way, but
Wow.
in my way, in my own teaching and feeling like I'm making this impact in a way that feels good and feels purposeful, feels creative, and just lights me up
Mm.
even more.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. What is it that you're doing in schools now then?
Yeah, so in schools I teach a before and after school program. Um that is a program that myself and a co-teacher, we came together and we're doing, and it's really around mindfulness and infusing some breathing exercises and stretching exercises, um, also known as meditation and yoga. Just to help children. We call it, they're our wellness warriors, and we teach them how when things are getting tough, when you need help and support, here are some things that you could do. Here is some movement for your body to help you um to stay strong. And we just teach them techniques that we find that they're sharing with their family, they're sharing with their friends. And then in the school, I'm working as a support person, just kind of helping the teachers in classrooms and such. But I've started a kindness club. And so, with fifth graders, and so we do some things around kindness. And through these things, I infuse the IP principles, or the I'm also trained in the I believe in me. I infuse some of those into these programs as well. So it's a little different from the straight program, but it's definitely a lot of these principles to help children feel empowered to help children feel like, um, they can have, goals and dreams, and how do you, work on those things. And I'm really big on kindness and helping others, and knowing that, while we have to take care of ourselves, we're not the only ones in this world. And so, it spans beyond us. And so, how can we create this ripple of kindness that spreads? So yeah, that's some of the stuff that I'm doing in the schools as well.
So you haven't really left teaching, have you?
No. In a lot of ways. So I tell people, in a lot of ways, I'm not like your traditional teacher, right? Where I have a classroom, but now I am helping and working with the entire school. I am in one school as of right now. Um I've done some other things with children that I've been contracted to do. But I'm I'm in this one school where I'm with the entire school population. And again, I feel like I'm making an impact in a greater way. I guess also along these last 4 years, I've realized that even though I also work with adults to do a lot of this work, um, children are really at my core. And I really love working with children. I think one of the things I had to realize is, how do I create my path, my way of doing that? And there's not just this one way. And I think that for so long I thought that, that there's just this one way to connect and teach children, and that was the traditional path. Um, and for me, having that path, I don't have any regrets, but I do feel like this path has, you know, I've realized, even through some unfortunate circumstances, I've realized that I learned a lot, and it's helped me to be in the position that I am in now. So,
So it sounds like being on this journey to find your true purpose. So what would you say to somebody who perhaps is feeling they still need to find their purpose? What advice would you give them?
sure. I would I would definitely say, to really sit down and think about, what are those things that you're really truly passionate about? What are the things that light you up in the world? Um, sometimes people think of some of those things as being a hobby, and sometimes that hobby could really be your true passion and purpose. Or the things that lend you to a lot of those things, the skills that you have, is something that you can take into another field or another realm, or creating your own thing. Um, not everyone wants to, you know, create this, their own thing and their own, business or things like that. But, you know, I really would say, for me, a lot of it was um journaling, and just really finding out what were those key things that I loved and I enjoyed doing. So even in teaching, those very things that were skills and talents and abilities that I had in teaching, that I started to feel were being stripped away from me, I was able to take those things and move it into something else. Um, and so I think journaling, I think really sitting down. I personally, I did a lot of um meditating, and really connecting more with myself, and, if you believe, you know in a higher being and creator, and made that connection to, like, just kind of help me along and tap into what those things are. I would also say get around people who inspire you and really are kind of connected to the things that you want to do and be or how you want to feel. Sometimes it's just a feeling, that you get and you just want to be in this space that helps you to light up and helps you to be a better version of yourself. Um and so I would say start with those little things, and I honestly feel um if you start to do that and connect more and more with those things, you will start to see these opportunities that come your way that you didn't even realize, that you didn't necessarily ask for, that you didn't know were coming, that weren't very specific in, what your goals were. And you start to see these things, and I I can trace a lot of what's happened to me over the last 4 years back to a lot of the people and connections that I made and opportunities that just kind of came my way because I stayed the path and I stayed the course and I really kept listening and tuning in to my personal, I guess, into my being, and I did really connect with what felt good and right. And you start to just, I think it just starts to kind of flow. It doesn't always feel easy, but you start to see that it definitely flows. Mike Dooley talks about don't worry about the cursed house, like, how it's gonna happen. Believe and do it. And I know that it sounds cliche, but there really there really are infinite possibilities. And I think also when you tap into those things, you start to realize that you start to get taken in directions that you never thought was a possibility. So, I think I know it sounded like a long-winded way to get there, but I would just say tap into you, journal, write stuff down, what's coming to you, and then also connect with someone. I connected with a life coach for a very long time that kind of helped me put a lot of these pieces together too. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
Great, great advice. Great advice. So,
Thank you.
do you have any closing thought as you look back over the last 4 years since you made this change? How would you sum up perhaps the greatest lesson that you've learned from it?
Wow. Oh, greatest lesson. Um, I think one of the greatest lessons, there honestly has been so many, but if the one thing that comes to mind is that, you know, for me, I've come to a point where um flexibility and ease needs to be a part of my life. That's one of the things that I've realized about myself. Now, I have not always been the most optimistic person, and so fear always takes over for me before I'm just like, I'm not that risk taker, but I think one of the lessons I've learned is that I really really just kind of, when that fear comes up along the way, it's you really have to shut that shut that off, and really reframe a lot of what you say to yourself. Again, thoughts become things. That's a huge thing in IP. And I think it's really really about what you say to yourself, the thoughts that you think, because it not only helps with you with yourself, but also the way you kind of, vibrate out into the world and how you connect with other people as well. So one of the things I've learned is a lot of the positive self-talk that I need to do um for myself, and really working on continuing to work on the limiting beliefs. It's not going to go away necessarily overnight. It takes time. And so I'm a work in progress. And we all are. We are always a work in progress. There's always um something that we need to be, making better in our lives. And so the flexibility and ease for me is anything that comes along for me is um I try not to really focus in too much on the fear, but really be flexible around it and allow for ease to be in my life. Like things don't have to be hard. They are, they come in and they feel like but it's also in how you approach it, and you can only control what you can ultimately
Yeah.
control. So,
I like
yeah.
that expression, flexibility around fear. I haven't heard that before. I like
Yeah,
that concept.
yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Tora. It's been a real
Thank
joy to
you.
speak to you. And there are so many lessons, so many nuggets of wisdom in what you've said. So I shall go back and watch over it again just to make sure I hear them all. But
Yeah,
thank you very much for
great.
sharing. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me and being here to talk to you. You have been a great inspiration for me as well. And so when you asked me to do this, I was more than happy, actually honored, because I've learned so much from you within the community as well. So thank you.
You.